Vermont may seem peaceful with its green hills and quiet towns, but hidden beneath that calm surface are stories that stretch back centuries: ancient stone circles, lost mines, strange carvings, and vanished villages swallowed by the woods. From Lake Champlain's depths to the misty slopes of Glastenbury Mountain, Vermont's past holds mysteries that still defy explanation. The lost copper mines of Vermont. There's something quietly haunting about Vermont's old hills. They're green and gentle now, covered in birch and maple, but deep beneath them runs a story that's far older than the state itself, a mystery that winds through native legends, colonial folklore, and even whispers of ancient mining long before Europeans ever arrived. I'm talking about the lost copper mines of Vermont. When you start digging into this legend, it feels like you're brushing against the edge of something ancient. The story goes that somewhere in Vermont, most often around the shores of Lake Champlain, the Green Mountains, or up near Stratford and Vershire, there once existed copper mines that predated recorded history. Nobody knows who dug them. They weren't part of any documented Native American enterprise, nor did they match early colonial work. What remains are faint traces, odd tunnels half filled with stone, abandoned shafts where no known mine was ever listed, and local tales that seem to stretch far beyond the 1700s. The story gained real traction in the early 19th century, when prospectors began scouring the hills for metal. Copper was already known in the area. The Elizabeth mine in Stratford, for example, became one of the oldest and most productive copper mines in the country. But even before that site was officially opened, settlers reported finding ancient-looking tunnels nearby. Some claimed the entrances were crudely walled off with rocks, as though someone had deliberately sealed them centuries earlier. Others said they found tools made of stone, not iron, which didn't make sense for European miners. Then came the legends from local Abenaki and other indigenous groups. Some spoke of a red metal that their ancestors used for ornaments and trade. Archaeologists know that native peoples across North America worked copper from the Great Lakes region thousands of years ago, hammering it cold into tools and jewelry long before smelting was discovered. So the idea of prehistoric copper mining isn't impossible. What's strange is that Vermont sits far from those well-documented copper working centers. If someone was mining copper here long before colonists arrived, who were they? And why does it seem no clear record of their activity remains? In towns like Vershire, Chelsea, and Stratford, old-timers used to tell stories of lost veins, places where rich copper seams had once been tapped and then mysteriously hidden again. One recurring tale describes a hermit who lived in the mountains during the late 1700s. He supposedly carried pure copper nuggets to local markets, but no one could ever figure out where he got them. Some thought he'd found an ancient mine and guarded it jealously. When he died, the secret died with him. People searched for years, finding only strange pits and broken rocks that looked far older than they should have. By the mid-1800s, these legends had blended with genuine mining history. The Elizabeth mine, Ifal mine, and several others proved that copper was indeed abundant beneath Vermont's soil. But geologists noticed something unusual: traces of old digging that didn't match 19th century methods. In some cases, the tunnels were too small for modern equipment, as if dug by hand with primitive tools. Some miners even claimed to find old fire-setting marks, suggesting that whoever dug them used heat to crack rock, a technique known from ancient Europe and prehistoric America alike. In the 1870s, the mystery deepened when workmen at one of the Ely mine shafts discovered a tunnel that didn't appear on any of their maps. The walls were crudely chiseled and blackened, as though fire had been used. There were no nails, no modern timbers, nothing that could date it easily. A local historian recorded the find, but later wrote that the tunnel had caved in and become inaccessible. Others dismissed it as coincidence, just an abandoned prospect hole from early settlers. Still, the rumor spread that it might have been part of an ancient copper operation long forgotten. Archaeologists have tried to separate fact from folklore. Some researchers think the ancient mines were simply early colonial ventures lost to time, small, hand-dug attempts before records were properly kept. But others argue that certain tunnels and surface finds seem much older. A few reports mention primitive stone hammers and antler picks found near copper veins, tools reminiscent of prehistoric mining in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. None of these finds were ever formally documented or preserved, which only adds to the fog of uncertainty. There's also the matter of the copper itself. Vermont's deposits are typically bound in sulfide ores, not the pure native copper that ancient peoples preferred. That's one reason skeptics doubt the idea of prehistoric mining here. Extracting usable metal from sulfide ore requires smelting, a process beyond known pre-Columbian technology in this region. but a handful of old accounts claim that small nodules of native copper were found near surface exposures, possibly transported by glaciers from other regions. If that's true, early people could have collected and worked the metal without needing furnaces at all. Standing today in places like Stratford or Vershire, it's easy to see how these stories took root. The hills are pocked with abandoned shafts, the remnants of 19th century copper fever. But the land feels older than that. Moss-covered stones hide the mouths of forgotten tunnels. Streams that once ran green with copper runoff now flow clear again, and locals still speak of old foundations and collapsed pits deep in the forest, where the ground seems too disturbed to be natural. You can walk through the woods and suddenly feel a draft from below, the earth breathing, hinting that something hollow lies underneath. One particularly eerie spot is near the old Alibel mine ruins. The shafts there have long since filled with water, turning into quiet turquoise pools. On calm days, the reflections shimmer like molten metal. Hikers sometimes find lumps of oxidized copper around the site, though the deeper shafts are sealed for safety. If you stand there long enough, you might imagine the clang of tools echoing from the past, miners who could have been colonists, or perhaps people from an even older world. The lost copper mines have also drawn the attention of treasure hunters. In the early 20th century, rumors circulated that Spanish explorers or early European visitors may have mined copper here before official colonization. Others pushed the theory further, claiming the mines were remnants of a transatlantic civilization, or even connected to the legendary Norse voyages to North America. While those ideas stretch far beyond evidence, they've become part of the mythos, another layer of mystery wrapped around an already confusing story. What's interesting is that the deeper you look, the more the mystery shifts from geology to anthropology. Maybe there really were early people who found copper in Vermont, worked it for ceremonial use, and left almost nothing behind. Or maybe what we're seeing are just echoes of the human imagination, stories born from the strange shapes of old mines and our instinct to fill the gaps of history. Either way, the legend speaks to something universal, our need to believe that the past still hides secrets right beneath our feet. Today you can visit some of these old mining sites. The Elizabeth Mine, once one of Vermont's largest, has been reclaimed as a historical and environmental site. Trails lead past the rusted machinery and scarred hillsides, where interpretive signs tell the story of human ambition and its cost. But few mention the deeper, older whispers, the ones that say these mines were rediscovered, not discovered at all. If you listen closely in those woods, especially near twilight, when the air cools and the birds go quiet, you can almost feel the presence of that older world. The wind moves through the trees like breath through a tunnel. The ground beneath your boots hides centuries of human labor, some remembered, some entirely lost. Whether the lost copper mines of Vermont are real or not, they remind us that history is rarely complete. Sometimes the most interesting truths lie in what was left behind, or buried too deep for us to ever truly know. The Lake Champlain Sea Serpent. If there's one mystery that defines Vermont's folklore more than any other, it's the legend that lurks beneath the waters of Lake Champlain. Locals call it Champ. For over 200 years, people have claimed to see a long serpentine creature gliding through the lake, a creature said to rise from the deep with a smooth back, a horse-like head, and eyes that seem far too knowing for an animal we've never managed to capture. It's a story that ties ancient native legends to modern-day eyewitnesses, blurring the line between folklore and science. Lake Champlain itself feels like the kind of place where something mysterious could hide. It's long and narrow, stretching over 100 miles between Vermont and New York, with parts that plunge to depths over 400 feet. The water is cold, dark, and layered, a perfect environment for legends to grow. Even before the first Europeans arrived, the Abenaki people who lived along its shores told stories of a great water spirit called Tatoskok. This being wasn't necessarily evil, but was respected and feared, a reminder that nature's power was not to be taken lightly. When French explorer Samuel de Champlain first mapped the lake in 1609, he described seeing a great fish with a head like a horse and scales a dagger long. Scholars debate whether he actually saw something unusual or simply exaggerated an encounter with a sturgeon or garfish. Still, his name would become forever tied to both the lake and the creature that supposedly inhabits it. By the 1800s, sightings of the lake serpent had become common enough to make newspapers. In 1819, a man named Captain Crumb reported seeing a creature 18.7 feet long, a strangely specific number, with a dark color and 3 teeth in its head. Others who claimed to see it described humps rising above the surface like the back of a submerged animal, or the water boiling as if something large were swimming just below. What makes the Champ story intriguing is that the sightings come from all types of people, not just thrill seekers or tourists, but sober locals, fishermen, and even entire families who swore they watched the creature for minutes at a time. In 1873, the New York Times ran a story about a railroad crew near Charlotte, Vermont, who said they saw a giant serpent rise and thrash before disappearing into the depths. Around the same time, P.T. Barnum famously offered a $50,000 reward for anyone who could capture the creature alive so he could display it in his circus. No one ever collected. Skeptics argue that most Champ sightings are misidentifications, floating logs, schools of fish, boat wakes, or even groups of otters swimming in a line. The lake's long, narrow shape makes it easy for light and shadow to distort what people see. On still days, temperature inversions can create mirages that make distant objects appear to rise out of the water. Add in local expectation, and it's easy to see how legends can feed themselves. Over time, Champ became less a monster and more a beloved local mystery. Towns along Lake Champlain embraced the legend, and today the creature's silhouette can be found on road signs, souvenirs, and even the logo of a local baseball team. But behind the lighthearted image lies a deep and persistent question: could there actually be something unknown living in the lake? But not every story can be dismissed so easily. In 1977, a woman named Sandra Mancy took what is still the most famous photograph of Champ. She and her family were picnicking along the lake near St. Albans when they noticed something large moving in the water. Mancy snapped a picture just before it sank. The resulting image shows a long curved neck and a hump rising from the lake, a shape strikingly similar to classic depictions of the Loch Ness Monster. Scientists later examined the photo and debated its authenticity. Some said it could be a floating tree or debris, while others noted the apparent scale and depth seemed inconsistent with the lake's shoreline. Mancy herself swore the photo was real until her death. More recently, sonar readings have captured large moving objects deep in Lake Champlain, shapes that don't match known fish or boats. In 2003, a Japanese television crew recorded a 15-foot-long moving target beneath the surface using sonar. The image was clear enough to rule out a school of fish, but too vague to identify. That same year, Vermont's state legislature passed a resolution protecting Champ as an endangered species, just in case. For those who live near the lake, the legend is woven into everyday life. Locals tell stories of foggy mornings when something breaks the surface without warning, or of quiet nights when a deep splash echoes across the water with no sign of a boat. Fishermen sometimes talk about nets torn or lines yanked with sudden force. Even if you're skeptical, there's something in the atmosphere of the lake that makes the impossible feel, if not plausible, at least imaginable. One explanation that's gained attention is the idea that Champ could be a large surviving fish species, such as a massive sturgeon. Lake Champlain is home to sturgeon that can grow over 8 feet long, with armored scales and a prehistoric look. Seen from a distance or through waves, they could easily be mistaken for something far larger. Another theory suggests Champ sightings could stem from a group of eels or garfish swimming in formation, creating the illusion of humps or a sinuous body. But then there are those who believe the mystery runs deeper. Some cryptozoologists suggest that Champ could be a relic population of plesiosaurs, ancient marine reptiles thought to have gone extinct millions of years ago. The idea has no scientific backing, but it captures the imagination, especially when combined with the native legends that speak of a powerful spirit dwelling in the water long before humans settled the region. The emotional side of this mystery is what keeps it alive. For Vermonters, Champ represents a connection to something untamed and timeless, a living symbol that nature still holds secrets we haven't solved. The legend also brings people together. Each summer, there are Champ festivals, themed boat tours, and community events celebrating the lake's resident monster. Kids grow up hearing that if they're lucky, they might be the next one to see him. If you stand on the shore of Lake Champlain at dusk, it's easy to understand why. The water turns silver in the fading light, and the horizon blurs into mist. The lake is so vast it feels almost like an inland sea, stretching endlessly north toward Canada. The air cools, the waves lap against the rocks, and every sound echoes a splash, a ripple, something unseen breaking the surface. For a second, your imagination fills in the rest. Maybe Champ is nothing more than folklore, layered on top of natural phenomena. Or maybe, beneath that deep, cold water, something ancient really does move. Until proof surfaces, the Lake Champlain sea serpent remains what it's always been, a mystery that refuses to sink, no matter how many times we try to explain it away. The Putney stone circles. Deep in the woods near the small town of Putney, Vermont, there's a place that doesn't quite fit the landscape around it. The forest feels ordinary enough at first, quiet trails, moss-covered rocks, and the sound of water moving softly through the trees. But then you notice the stones, large rounded boulders arranged in careful circles, some half buried by time, others still standing in deliberate formations. Nobody knows who placed them here, or why. Locals call them the Putney stone circles, and they've puzzled historians and hikers for generations. Like many of Vermont's ancient mysteries, the circles don't appear in any official record of native or colonial construction. They're scattered across forested hillsides, some in clusters, others standing alone. From above, drone footage has revealed that several align with solar points, the rising and setting sun during solstices and equinoxes. But when were they built? And for what purpose? The first modern accounts date back to the early 1800s, when settlers clearing land stumbled upon strange stone arrangements under the soil. Some assumed they were old boundary markers or collapsed walls. Others sensed something older. A few circles measured nearly 30 feet across, with central stones positioned upright like crude altars. Over time, stories began to form, whispers that the stones might mark burial sites, ceremonial grounds, or even remnants of an ancient culture that vanished long before written history reached Vermont. If you ask around town, you'll hear a range of theories. Some say the circles were created by the Abenaki people for seasonal rituals. Others claim they're colonial root cellars or frost shelters misinterpreted by modern eyes. And then there are those who believe they're far older, evidence of a forgotten civilization that once occupied New England, similar to the mysterious stone chambers and walls found throughout the Northeast. When you walk through the site, it's easy to see why the debate continues. The stones are worn smooth, covered with lichen, their edges softened by centuries of weather. In some circles, smaller rocks form spokes or pathways leading outward, like the rays of a wheel. One arrangement aligns almost perfectly with the sunrise at the summer solstice. Another seems to mirror constellations, specifically Orion's belt, when viewed from a particular angle. Whether that's coincidence or design depends on who you ask. Archaeologists who have examined the area tend to tread cautiously. Officially, no excavation has revealed tools, bones, or artifacts that would confirm an ancient human origin. The soil around the stones is shallow and rocky, which makes dating them almost impossible. Most academic studies describe them as field clearings, built by early farmers removing rocks to create workable land. That's a practical explanation, and it might even be true for some formations, but it doesn't account for the circle's deliberate geometry or why so many appear in places that were never farmed. There's also the matter of placement. Many of the Putney stones sit on elevated ridges with wide views of the sky, ideal for tracking the sun or stars. Some align with nearby water sources, while others sit at the convergence of old trails and river bends. To early cultures, such features often carried spiritual or navigational importance. If the circles were meant as ceremonial or astronomical sites, they fit a much broader pattern seen across the ancient world, people marking time and season through stone. A few independent researchers have compared the Putney circles to the Mystery Hill structures of New Hampshire or the megalithic sites of New England's so-called stone builders. These small, scattered sites share a sense of purpose that feels intentional, but just out of reach. Low stone chambers, cairns, and circles aligned to celestial events but lacking cultural context. Could these be remnants of the same lost tradition? Some even speculate that early European visitors, possibly Norse explorers or transatlantic travelers, left them behind. It's a tempting thought, but evidence remains elusive. Then there are the stories, the kind that aren't written down but passed around campfires or whispered among locals. Hikers have reported hearing faint rhythmic sounds near the stones at night, as though the earth itself is echoing. Others describe a strange energy in the area, an almost magnetic pull that makes compasses spin or causes cell signals to drop. Whether that's coincidence, atmospheric interference, or pure imagination, it adds to the sense that the site exists slightly outside of ordinary space. There's an older legend told by residents of Windham County that links the stones to an ancient burial ground. According to one account, when settlers tried to move a few of the rocks for construction, misfortune followed. Livestock vanished, tools broke, and one man fell mysteriously ill. The stones were returned, and no one disturbed them again. Over time, people began leaving small offerings, flowers, pebbles, even coins at the center of the largest circle, not as a ritual exactly, but out of respect for whatever history lies buried there. Modern visitors describe the experience as oddly calming rather than eerie. You don't feel fear so much as curiosity. The forest muffles sound. You can hear your own footsteps crunching leaves and the distant call of birds. When sunlight filters through the canopy and strikes the stones just right, they seem to glow faintly, the moss turning bright green. You can almost imagine ancient hands lifting and arranging them with quiet intention. What's fascinating about the Putney stone circles is how they challenge our sense of time. Vermont isn't a place most people associate with prehistoric monuments. We think of English moors or Irish hills when we imagine stone circles, not the quiet woods of New England. Yet here they are, enigmatic and unclaimed, waiting for someone to make sense of them. In recent years, local preservationists have worked to protect the site from development. Some areas are on private land, but others are accessible by hiking trails that weave through dense forest. Signs warn visitors not to disturb or rearrange the stones. The Vermont Division for Historic Preservation has cataloged a few as cultural features of uncertain origin, which is about as neutral a label as you can give to something that defies easy explanation. If you visit at dawn or dusk, you might notice how the light plays across the landscape. The stones cast long, almost deliberate shadows, as if marking time. In winter, when the snow outlines each circle perfectly, their symmetry becomes undeniable. Whether they were made by farmers, shamans, or someone else entirely, they were built with purpose. A quiet message carved into the earth that still speaks, even if we no longer understand the language. Standing there today, surrounded by silence and the slow heartbeat of the forest, it's hard not to feel connected to something ancient. Maybe these circles were once a calendar, or a temple, or simply a way for people to honor the changing seasons. Or maybe they're just stones, placed by human hands that didn't realize how much mystery they'd leave behind. Either way, the Putney stone circles remind us that even in a small corner of Vermont, the past can still whisper through the trees if you know how to listen. The Mount Independence Earthworks. At first glance, Mount Independence doesn't look like a place where ancient secrets might hide. It sits quietly along the shores of Lake Champlain in Orwell, Vermont, a broad forested hill overlooking the water, with winding trails, old stone foundations, and the faint outlines of what was once a Revolutionary War fortress. Most visitors come here for the history they can see, the cannons, the ramparts, the stories of soldiers who defended the site during America's fight for independence. But beneath that layer of known history, something older waits. Strange mounds and stone formations half buried in the earth hint that Mount Independence might have been significant long before 1776, perhaps for thousands of years. The site's official story begins during the Revolution, when it became one of the largest American fortifications in the Northeast. Engineers built massive defensive walls, trenches, and earthen embankments across the peninsula to guard against British attacks from the north. Yet, long before the Continental Army arrived, local legends and archaeological clues suggest the land was already shaped both physically and spiritually by people who understood its power. Early settlers noticed unusual mounds and earth ridges that didn't seem military in nature. Some were located far from the known fort lines, in positions that made no strategic sense for cannon fire or defense. These low, rounded mounds appeared to predate the Revolution by centuries. A few were aligned with the lake's natural contours, while others seemed to form geometric shapes, straight lines and gentle arcs visible only when viewed from above. When archaeologists began mapping the area in the 20th century, they found that some of these earthworks didn't match 18th century engineering at all. The Revolutionary War fortifications were angular and steep, built quickly for defense. The older mounds were smooth, symmetrical, and sometimes ring-shaped. Soil analysis hinted at different layers of occupation, with charcoal and pottery fragments dating much earlier than colonial settlement. That discovery raised a quiet but profound question. Could Mount Independence have been a sacred or strategic site long before American troops set foot there? For local Abenaki and other Algonquian-speaking peoples, Lake Champlain was a corridor of trade and travel. The lake connected the St. Lawrence River to the Hudson Valley, a natural highway long before the concept of borders existed. Oral traditions speak of places along its shores where the land held memory, where gatherings and rituals took place under the open sky. Some elders described mounds that were not graves but markers, places to watch the sun, honor ancestors, or celebrate seasonal change. Mount Independence, with its commanding view and proximity to deep water, fits that description almost perfectly. Even the mountain's name, given centuries later, feels like an echo of something older. Independence, not just political, but spiritual. A place where people came to stand apart, to observe, to seek balance between the land and sky. Modern surveys have found at least 3 major earthworks that don't conform to known military maps. One oval mound on the southern slope appears to align with sunrise at the spring equinox. Another ridge points almost directly toward the summer solstice sunset over the Adirondacks. A circular depression nearby could have been a meeting space or council ring, though it's now overgrown with ferns and scattered birch. Skeptics argue that these features might simply be remnants of natural glacial activity, eskers and drumlins reshaped by later human use. Vermont's landscape is full of these subtle geological forms, and nature can mimic the geometry of human hands. But to those who've studied the site closely, there's a feeling that some of the lines are too deliberate, too ordered to be chance. In 2006, during a preservation project, workers uncovered an ancient fire pit beneath one of the known revolutionary earthworks. The charcoal inside dated to more than 1,000 years before the fort's construction. No one can say whether it was part of a larger settlement or a single camp, but it confirmed that Mount Independence had drawn people long before the revolution. Later excavations revealed chipped stone tools and fragments of ceramics similar to those found at other pre-contact sites in the Champlain Valley. That connection between the ancient and the colonial gives Mount Independence a layered energy, a sense that each generation built upon the last, unaware they were adding new chapters to an older story. The American soldiers who fortified the hill likely never realized their trenches cut through places that had already been sacred for centuries. When you walk the trails today, the past still feels close. The ground rises and falls gently, like waves frozen in soil. Ferns hide the outlines of mounds, and shallow depressions mark where earthworks once stood. The woods are thick now, but if you stand near the summit and look out toward the lake, you can almost picture what early people saw: the silver water stretching north toward Canada, framed by the blue-gray ridges of the Adirondacks. It's a commanding view, but also peaceful, the kind that invites both vigilance and reflection. Local guides often focus on the revolutionary history, the soldiers' hardships, the bitter winters, the retreat of 1777 when British forces pushed south. Yet some visitors leave with a different impression, that Mount Independence feels older than the Revolution, as if the fort was just one more temporary use of a place that's always been significant. The earthworks that remain, both military and ancient, seem to coexist, one layer of human effort folded over another. There's also a persistent story among locals that strange lights have occasionally been seen over the lake near Mount Independence, glowing orbs that rise silently from the water and vanish into the night sky. Fishermen and campers describe them as too steady and bright to be lanterns or boats. Some think they're atmospheric reflections, others perhaps something spiritual, tied to the land's deep history. Whether those reports are folklore or fact, they add another thread to the site's tapestry of mystery. In the present day, Mount Independence is a protected state historic site. Wooden walkways and interpretive signs guide visitors through the remains of barracks, fort walls, and cannon platforms. But venture off the main paths, and you'll find quieter places, shaded clearings where the earth subtly curves upward or dips in smooth arcs. Those are the spots that archaeologists mark on their maps but rarely explain. They're too old to belong to the fort, too human-looking to be ignored. If you pause there, you'll notice how silent it becomes. The forest hum fades, the wind shifts, and for a moment the weight of time settles in. The idea that this ground has witnessed thousands of years of human presence from ancient gatherings to colonial wars is humbling. It's easy to forget how thin the line between history and prehistory really is. Maybe the old mounds are nothing more than relics of geology, or maybe they're the fingerprints of Vermont's first inhabitants, people who marked the land not with walls and weapons, but with shapes that spoke to the rhythm of the sun and the turning of seasons. Mount Independence, in that sense, might be less about war than about continuity. A reminder that even in places defined by conflict, the deeper story is one of endurance, of land that remembers, even when we forget. The ghost town of Glastenbury. Hidden deep in the Green Mountains of southern Vermont lies one of the strangest places in New England, a ghost town swallowed by forest and mystery. Today, Glastenbury is little more than a name on a map, but its story has become legend. A place cursed by misfortune, haunted by disappearances, and surrounded by wilderness that seems to resist human settlement. People call it many things: a lost town, a vanished community, even the heart of the Bennington Triangle. Whatever name you choose, Glastonbury's silence feels deliberate, as if the land itself decided long ago it wanted to be left alone. Glastonbury's history began innocently enough in the 1700s. The area was settled by hardy New Englanders drawn by timber, water power, and isolation. The mountains offered dense forests and streams strong enough to run mills. By the mid-1800s, Glastonbury had a small but steady population: loggers, charcoal makers, and their families, living in a cluster of homes and camps along the rivers. The town was remote, rugged, and difficult to reach even in good weather. But for a few decades it worked. Then, as quickly as it rose, Glastenbury began to unravel. The mountain's steep slopes were stripped bare by overlogging. Once the trees were gone, the soil eroded and the streams dried up, mills shut down, jobs vanished, and families moved away. By the late 1800s, fewer than a dozen people remained. In 1897, a flash flood destroyed what was left of the logging railroad, washing out bridges and cutting off the only reliable route in or out. That same year, the state officially disincorporated the town, a polite way of saying it was dead. But that's only the beginning of Glastenbury's strange reputation. Long before settlers arrived, the Abenaki people considered the mountain sacred and dangerous. They believed it was a place where the four winds met, a point of balance that could easily turn chaotic. Some legends warned that hunters who climbed too high risked vanishing into another world. They spoke of stone people who lived within the mountain, and voices that called travelers off their paths. To them, Glastenbury wasn't a place to live, it was a place to respect and avoid. After the town's collapse, stories began to circulate of odd events and eerie experiences in the area. Locals claimed compasses malfunctioned near the summit. Hikers reported strange lights flickering in the trees at night. Some said they heard distant music or voices echoing across the valleys with no clear source. But what truly cemented Glastenbury's legend were the disappearances. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 people vanished in or near the Glastenbury wilderness, cases that remain unsolved to this day. The first was Mitty Rivers, a seasoned local hunting guide who knew the mountains better than anyone. He was leading a group back from a trip when he walked ahead along the trail and never returned. Despite massive searches, no trace of him was ever found. A year later, 18-year-old Paula Weldon, a Bennington College student, went hiking on the long trail, which cuts through Glastenbury. Witnesses saw her heading toward the woods at dusk, wearing a bright red jacket. She never came back. Her disappearance sparked one of Vermont's largest manhunts, but searchers found nothing, not a scrap of clothing, not a footprint, not even a clue. Over the next few years, more people vanished under equally baffling circumstances. A man named James Tedford disappeared from a moving bus traveling through the region. A boy named Paul Jepson went missing near the old town site, and a woman named Frida Longer disappeared while hiking with her cousin, only for her body to be found months later in an area that had already been searched multiple times. By then, the pattern was too eerie to ignore. The media coined the term Bennington Triangle, drawing parallels to the Bermuda Triangle, a region where people simply vanish without explanation. Some blamed the rough terrain, wild animals, or the unpredictable weather that can change in minutes. Others whispered about something supernatural, a curse left over from the land's sacred past, or an energy that distorts time and space. Even today, hikers describe an unsettling atmosphere in the old Glastenbury area. The forest feels unusually quiet, as if muffled. Animals are scarce. GPS devices sometimes lose signal, and compasses can act erratically near certain ridges. A few people report the feeling of being watched, not in a paranoid way, but like the woods are aware of you. It's easy to understand how stories grow here. The mountain's isolation amplifies every sound, every flicker of movement. When fog rolls through, the trees vanish into a gray blur, and the silence deepens until you can hear your own heartbeat. There are still physical traces of the old town if you know where to look. Deep in the woods, the faint outlines of stone foundations mark where houses once stood. Rusted bits of metal, collapsed chimneys, and fragments of tools lie half buried under moss. The old rail bed cuts through the forest like a ghost of progress that never lasted. Locals say that when the wind shifts just right, you can hear the faint echo of train whistles, though no train has run there in more than a century. For a brief time in the early 1900s, investors tried to revive Glastenbury as a mountain resort. They built a small hotel, marketed the area as a health retreat, and even hosted dances on the weekends. But the plan collapsed after only one season. Guests complained of the oppressive quiet of strange noises at night, and of the unsettling feeling that something about the place was off. The mountain returned to silence once more. Scientists and historians tend to approach the Glastenbury mystery pragmatically. The disappearances, they argue, likely stem from a combination of human error, wildlife, and the treacherous terrain. The mountain is steep, covered in thick underbrush, with hidden sinkholes and unpredictable weather. A single wrong turn could easily lead to tragedy. But even those who dismiss the supernatural side admit that something about Glastenbury feels different, a kind of weight in the air, an unshakable sense of isolation that lingers long after you leave. Today, Glastenbury is officially uninhabited. The town's charter still exists on paper, but its population is listed as 0. The only visitors are hikers, researchers, and the occasional paranormal enthusiast drawn by curiosity. The long trail still winds across its slopes, and a few hardy travelers camp near the ruins, hoping to feel the energy that so many others have described. Most leave with nothing but stories of quiet nights and cold winds, but some say they heard voices, footsteps, or the rustle of unseen movement just beyond their campfire light. Standing there today, surrounded by forest that's reclaimed every trace of human life, it's easy to understand why Glastonbury became legend. The land feels untouched, eternal. The air is heavy with the smell of pine and damp earth. The mountains rise like dark walls against the horizon, and every path seems to vanish into shadow. Whether the mystery comes from something paranormal or simply from the raw power of nature, Glastonbury remains a place that refuses to be fully understood. It's more than a ghost town. It's a reminder that not every part of the map wants to be filled in.